अथ तृतीयोऽध्यायः। अर्जुन उवाच जायसी चेत् कर्मणश्चेत् मता बुद्धिर्जनार्दन तत्किं कर्मणि घोरे मां नियोजयसि केशव.
Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruition work?
वामिश्रेणेय वाक्येन बुद्धिं मोहयसीव मे तदेकं वद निश्चित्य येन श्रेयोऽहमाप्नुयाम्.
My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be the most beneficial for me.
श्रीभगवानुवाच लोकेऽस्मिन् विविधा निष्ठा पुरा प्रोक्ता मया नघ ज्ञानयोगेन साङ्ख्यं कर्मयोगेन योगिनाम्.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation and others by devotional service.
न कर्मणामनारम्भान् नैष्कर्म्यं पुरुषोऽश्नुते न च सन्न्यसनादेव सिद्धिं समधिगच्छति.
Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection.
न हि कश्चित् क्षणमपि जातु तिष्ठत्यकर्मकृत् कार्यते शवशत्कर्म सर्वप्रकृतिजैर्गुणैः.
Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment.
कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारस्य उच्यते.
One who retains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender.
यस्मिन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभतेऽर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रियैः कर्मयोगम् असक्तस्तविशिष्यते.
On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begin karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior.
नियतं कुरु कर्मत्वं कर्म ज्यायोऽस्य कर्मणः शरीरयात्रापि च ते न प्रसिद्ध्येद कर्मणः.
Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work.
यज्ञार्था कर्मणोऽन्यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्मबन्धनः तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्गः समाचर.
Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage.
सह यज्ञाः प्रजाः सृष्ट्वा पुरुवाच प्रजापतिः अनेन प्रसविष्यध्वम् एषवोऽस्ति त्वष्टकामधुक्.
In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna or sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation."
देवान् भावयतानेन ते देवा भावयन्तु वः परस्परं भावयन्तः श्रेयः परमवाप्स्यत.
In charge of various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna or sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief.
इष्टान् भोगानि हो देवा दास्यन्ते यज्ञभाविताः तैर्दत्तान् प्रदायभ्ययो यो भुङ्क्ते तेन एव सः.
In charge of various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna or sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief.
यज्ञशिष्टाशिनः सन्तो मुच्यन्ते सर्वक्लेशैः भुञ्जते ते त्वगं पापा ये पचन्त्यात्मकारणात्.
The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin.
अन्नाद् भवन्ति भूतानि पर्जन्यादन्न सम्भवः यज्ञाद् भवति पर्जन्यो यज्ञात् कर्म समुद्भवः.
All living bodies subsist of food grains which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna or sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties.
कर्म ब्रह्मोद्भवं विद्धि ब्रह्माक्षर समुद्भवं तस्मात् सर्वगतं ब्रह्मा नित्यं यज्ञे प्रतिष्ठितम्.
Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, transcendence is eternally situated in the acts of sacrifice.
एवं प्रवर्तितं चक्रं नानुवर्तयति हयया अघार्युरिन्द्रिया रामो मोघं पार्थ स जीवति.
My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of senses, such a person lives in vain.
त्वात्मरतिरेव स्याद् आत्मतृप्तश्च मानवः आत्मन् एव च सन्तुष्टस्तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते.
But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully sated for him, there is no duty.
नैव तस्य कृतेनार्थो न कृते नेह कश्चन न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु कश्चिदर्थव्यपाश्रयः.
A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being.
तस्मादसक्त सतं कार्यं कर्म समाचर असक्तो याश्चरन् कर्म परमाप्नोति पुरुषः.
Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the Supreme.
कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धिम् आस्थिता जनकादयः लोकसङ्ग्रहमेवापि सम्पर्श्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि.
Kings such as Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work.
यद्यदाचरति श्रेष्ठः तत्तदेवेतरो जनः स यत्प्रमाणं कुरुते लोकस्तदनुवर्तते.
Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues.
न मे पार्थास्ति कर्तव्यं त्रिषु लोकेषु किंचन नानवाप्तमवाप्तव्यं वर्त एव च कर्मणि.
O son of Partha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties.
यदित्यहं न वर्तेयं जातु कर्मण्यतन्द्रितः मम वर्त्मानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्या पार्थ सर्वशः.
For if I ever failed to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path.
उत्सीदेयुरिमे लोका न कुर्यान् कर्म चेदहं संकर्यस्य च कर्ता स्याम् उपहन्यामि मा प्रजाः.
If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings.
सक्ता कर्मण्य विद्वांसो यथा कुर्वन्ति भारत कुर्यान् विद्वांसता सक्तास् चिकीर्षुर्लोकसङ्ग्रहम्.
As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned men similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path.
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेद् अज्ञानां कर्मसङ्गिनां जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि विद्वान् युक्तसमाचरन्.
So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness.
प्रकृते क्रियमाणानि गुणैः कर्माणि सर्वशः अहंकार विमूढात्मा कर्ताहमिति मन्यते.
The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of a false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature.
तत्त्ववित्तु महाबाहु गुणकर्म विभागयोः गुणागुणेषु वर्तन्त इति मत्वा न सज्जते.
One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results.
प्रकृतेर्गुणसम्मूढाः सज्जन्ते गुणकर्मसु तान् कृष्णविदो मन्दान् कृष्णविन्न विचालयेत्.
Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge.
मयि सर्वाणि कर्माणि सन्न्यस्याध्यात्मचेतसा निराशीर्निर्ममो भूत्वा युध्यस्व विगतवज्वरः.
Therefore, O Arjuna, surrounding all your work onto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims of proprietorship, and free from lethargy, you need to fight.
एमे मतलिदं नित्यम् अनुतिष्ठन्ति मानवाः श्रद्धावन्तु न सूयन्तो मुच्यन्ते तीपि कर्मभिः.
Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions.
एत्वेतदभ्यसूयन्तो नानुतिष्ठन्ति मे मतं सर्वज्ञानविमूढास्तान् विद्धि नष्टान् चेतसः.
But those who, out of envy, disregard these teachings and do not follow them are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection.
स्वदृशं चेष्टते स्वस्वाय प्रकृतिर्ज्ञानवानापि प्रकृतिं यान्ति भूतानि निग्रह किं करिष्यति.
Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish?
इन्द्रियस्य इन्द्रियस्यार्थे रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितो तयोर्नवशमागच्छेत् तौ शस्य परिपन्थिनौ.
There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects.
श्रेयान् स्वधर्मो हि गुणः परधर्मात् स्वनुष्ठितत् स्वधर्मे निधनं श्रेयः परधर्मो भयावहः.
One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization.
अर्जुन उवाच अथ केन प्रयुक्तोऽयं पापं चरति पुरुषः अनिच्छन्नपि वार्ष्णेय बलादिवनियोजितः.
It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even with faults, than another's duty perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, because following another's path is dangerous.
श्री भगवान् उवाच काम एष क्रोध एषः रजो गुणसमुद्भवः महाशनो महापाप्मा विद्धेयनमिह वैरिणम्.
Arjuna said, O descendant of Vishnu, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force?
धूमेनाव्रियते वह्निर् यथा दर्शो मलेन च यतोऽल्भेनावृतो गर्भस् तथा तेनेदमावृतम्.
The Supreme Personality, Lord Krishna, said, It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world.
आवृतं ज्ञानमेतेन ज्ञानिनो नित्यवैरिणा कामरूपेण कौन्तेय दुष्पूरेणानलेन च.
As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust.
इन्द्रियाणि मनो बुद्धिर् अस्याधिष्ठानमुच्यते एतैर्विमोहयत्येषः ज्ञानमावृत्य देहिनम्.
Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire.
तस्मात् त्वामिन्द्रियाण्यादौ नियम्य भरतर्षभ पाप्मानां प्रजहित्येनं ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम्.
The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of a living entity and bewilders him.
इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहु इन्द्रियेभ्ये परन्मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः यो बुद्धे परतस्तुतः.
Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning curb this great symbol of sin, namely lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization.
एवं बुद्धे परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहु कामरूपं दुरासदम्.
The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, namely the soul, is even higher than the intelligence.
Om Tatsadihi. Srimad Gitasu Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyaya Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Karma Yogo Nama Tritiyodhyaya.